I remember when I was an intern at the Swedish embassy in Argentina, beginning of the 2000s. And our then ambassador was amazed because we could Google answers to anything. And she had not yet discovered this tool. And I feel something similar when I think about when I now slowly try to approach generative AI. So this is sort of a few thoughts from my perspective, and then I might be corrected or elaborated or contradicted by friends here today. But our ability to use AI will sort of shape our competitiveness, our prosperity, our capacity of innovation, our labor market, education system. We now talked about the health sector. We have seen it affecting stock markets, and it affects relations between countries. It is in a way technical, practical, but also political, philosophical, ethical, and some would even argue raises existential questions. And we need to ensure that we are as advanced as possible in developing and using this in all sectors of society. And I'm sure that Fredrik will develop this further, but we as Europe needs to step up further, both in benefiting and drawing upon the potential, the amazing potential, but also in managing some of the risks. And here, innovation and key is, and probably will be key. There is an exhibition in the entry that I invite you on research and innovation that I invite you to have a look at after. So to conclude, this is part of our Nordic cooperation with Romania that is being strengthened. And today we are very proud to present Swedish AI professor Fredrik. He also holds numerous high-level advisory roles in this field, both in Sweden and the EU. And we are also very happy to have Dorian with us from Google Bucharest to share their thoughts and experiences and to kick off the Nordic Festival here. And before giving the floor to you, I will also invite State Secretary Dumea to give a few words on the Romanian perspective before we give the floor to you, and then hope for a good discussion. And so please prepare for questions at the end as well. Please. I'm very glad you could join us.
Thank you, Madam. Hello, everybody. Dear guests, distinguished representative of the Nordic countries and friends of the Nordic Festival. First of all, thank you for the invitation, for taking part of this nice event where we can discuss such an important topic, AI. And of course, we already use it, and we know how to use it and how to get some benefits out of it. But now we are facing a new step in AI, the generative AI that we are all expecting. Hopefully it will not suck up all the power in the world. We'll see how that goes. But it is what it is. So it has a lot of potential, of course, and there are a lot of questions that we all have. And that's why we are here today to talk about these ideas and any kind of questions we might have. So I'm very interested in trustworthy generative AI, because this is the most important thing that we need to do when it comes to AI, to make it trustworthy, to trust it will give us the best solution. So I'm hoping that working together with experts, with agencies, with governments, with the European Union, with everybody that's on this very big and powerful table of AI, we all hope that we can make it trustworthy. Another key point that I always make when we discuss about AI is an older concept I'm trying to bring up, it's what we do after we get generative AI and what we will do tomorrow. So my best advice for everybody, and especially for the young generation, is to understand and to accept the concept of lifelong learning. So what I believe will happen tomorrow is we will need to start learning more and be open to changing our profession, our job, more frequent, and even going to a very different type of job. So lifelong learning would tell us that we always need to study, to learn, and to evolve, because what we do today, it might be not so relevant tomorrow. So we need to be prepared and open to learning new things. Romania is investing, I think, about even more than 6 billion euros from the resilience plan. And a lot of these funds go into improving our digitalizations and digitalization process and how citizens work with the government. And of course, a lot of money goes to innovation as well. And this is a very important topic in Romania, and we are very proud to be well known in the IT industry. I think we are the 6th country in the world when it comes to number of IT specialists per 1,000 citizens, per 1,000 people. So we are number 6 in the world. We are number 1 in Europe. So when you count how many IT specialists we have in IT compared to thousands of people, Romania is in the first place in Europe, and we are even better than US when it comes to this topic. So we have a lot of specialists here in Romania, and we are very proud of our community and the fact that young generations wanted to study IT. So it's a very good place to have these conversations. Hopefully we can work together better and build more bridges, and together we can foster and bring more opportunities from AI, so we can have a better life in the end. Thank you so much. Looking forward to learning more from the specialists and to questions. Thank you.
Okay, so then it's my turn. So it's a great pleasure to be here. As Anna said, my name is Fredrik Heintz, and I'm a professor of computer science at Linköping University in Sweden. So actually, Linköping University was the first university in Sweden that started to do AI. We also was the university that started doing computer science in Linköping. So we have been doing AI research for more than 50 years. Personally, I've only been doing it for about 25 years. So we actually built fully autonomous helicopters about 20 years ago. When I was a PhD student, we built fully autonomous helicopters. We actually did our own drones and these kind of things before they kind of became popular. But besides doing technical research on AI, I have also been part, for example, of the European high-level expert group where we have developed these ethical guidelines for trustworthy AI. And I've also been part of the Swedish AI Commission, where we delivered a roadmap for AI for Sweden in the end of November last year. So what I intend to talk about here today is to basically give a bit of an overview of this with trustworthy generative AI, I mean where we are and where we're going, and I will also reflect a bit upon this with jobs and these kind of things. So I think we can start out by realizing, or acknowledging the fact that AI development is very fast. And I think as I said, we have been doing this for 50 years, but it's kind of interesting to see now that it's more general population and the broader interest in society around these questions. And I think it actually started very much with this self-driving cars about 10, 15 years ago. That was kind of the first, or not the first, but one of these big applications where AI technology really became useful and kind of reached the broad populations. Then it was this with computers beating the human world champions in games like chess and Go and poker and StarCraft and bridge and so on and so forth. And I think one thing we have learned from this is that if you have something that's more or less well-defined, such as a game, it doesn't matter if you have hidden information, if you have opponents or if you have teammates, it's more a matter of time before the computer are better than us at those kind of activities. And then, of course, now we have this generative AI, which I will talk more about. And what we can see is that if we compare the quality of these systems against how kind of human performance, we are starting to see that these systems are reaching the level of at least the average humans. And of course, the question then becomes, will it also be better than the best people? I would not say that we are there yet, but definitely that we see the quality and the usefulness of these systems rapidly improving. But let's go to this generative AI. So I think that is, I mean, when you mention AI today, that is what people think about. So what is generative AI? So basically generative AI is AI models which can generate different types of content. I think the first system which really got a broad attention was this DALL-E 2 that was released in April 2022. And then you could use this kind of short text prompts to generate photorealistic images that we find interesting, inspiring, and intriguing. In this case, it's teddy bears mixing sparkling chemicals as mad scientists in a steampunk style. And from my kind of computer science perspective, what I find very fascinating is that there is very little content, I mean, in this kind of textual descriptions. But if you're actually going to generate a full picture, there is a lot of details that you actually have to fill in. Just to take one example, it says teddy bears, so of course it should be more than one, but it doesn't say if it should be 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, 100 or 1,000. So I mean, it's a lot of things that is not clear that you need to kind of fill in. And in this case, it filled in 2. I mean, there's sparkling, there's definitely something sparkling there. There's chemicals, it's a bit unclear, maybe it's the test tubes there, or the chemical part is a bit unclear, but anything, I mean, anyway, we can at least see that these are interesting images. Actually redid this a year ago using DALL-E 3. So I used Microsoft Copilot, which we have made available to all employees and all students at our university. So everyone has access to these tools and can use them. I just put in the exact same prompt as we had in the previous version, and you can see that we still get 2 teddy bears. We can see that the chemical part seems to be a bit better, more test tubes. The sparkling part seems to be a little bit less sparkling. And then the steampunk style seems to be the funny hats and glasses, and now it even got a bunch of extra things on top of the hat there, which is very unclear what they're supposed to do. But anyway, it's still kind of interesting. But it's not only images, you can also generate videos. So this is from OpenAI's Sora. So this was, I mean, these videos were released, I think, February last year. So in the same way as before, I mean, you have this prompt which then describes the different parts in this scene. So you can see a stylish woman walks down a Tokyo street filled with warm, glowing neon animated city signage. And you can see, of course, there are all these signs and this neon light, and of course they do these things that are hard, like reflections in wet surfaces and reflections in sunglasses and so on. So what we can see is that you can actually generate video content from these kind of short prompts. And of course, what's interesting here is that you can do this on demand. So that you don't have to kind of pre-record anything, but rather if someone needs something, or if someone wants to generate a video of something, you want to capture people's interest. So, they're looking for things in Bucharest, for example, you can just generate videos with the content they're asking for without having to think in advance exactly what people will be looking for. Or for that matter, maybe you're interested in watching a movie at night. You could just generate the movie you want with the script you want, with the characters you want. And then, of course, you can always change the ending if you didn't like it. So I think the opportunities with these kind of video generations is extremely interesting. You can also generate sounds or music. So there are these services like Suno, where you can basically generate music. So you just write the style of the music, what you want the lyrics to be about, and so on. And it can generate songs for you, again, completely on demand. And then we have these more, let's say, reasoning models. I mean, now, of course, everyone is talking about DeepSeek, the Chinese reasoning model that was released a few weeks ago, but which then can do more sophisticated generation of content, and I will get back a bit to that. And by using these kind of models, you can now basically do research. So this is then OpenAI's deep research. Let's see, maybe. Yes. So you can then use these tools to generate reports. So in this case, compile a research report on how the retail industry has changed in the past 3 years. Use bullets and tables where necessary for clarity. It will then ask you for clarification questions, so it knows what you want it to do, and then you provide a bit more input to the system, and then the system goes out, look for relevant sources, and then analyzes these sources, extracts the information, presents it in bullet points and tables, and so on. So you basically can use these tools now to do a lot of this kind of research activities, market analysis, and so on and so forth. And of course, we are just seeing the start of it. So even though it exists and it works, I think we will see even more progress going forward. So I've talked about a lot of these different generative AI kind of tools, I mean, different modalities, but probably the type of modality that most people are using and thinking about is these large language models like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and so on and so forth. And why are these large language models so interesting? I think for one reason is that basically everything in our society, everything in our culture is very much language-based. And by being able to analyze, process, and generate natural language, we're basically making it possible to reach out and integrate with most other things in society and our culture. And of course, these large language models can be used for a wide variety of many different things. Of course, they can be used for producing text, but in some sense maybe that's not the most interesting. I think you could do a lot of more interesting things like actually using it to get feedback on your own writing. So if you want to use it in, say, a study context, it's probably not very useful if you just generate a text and you don't learn that much. But what if you instead, you write a little bit and then you ask, give me feedback on my text. How can I improve it? What are the kind of counter arguments to my argumentation? And so on and so forth. So basically you can have an interactive dialogue around the text that you are producing so that you can learn how to produce better texts. And of course you can generate summaries. Maybe you need a summary of 123 words. Then you can just generate a summary of 123 words. Or you can do the other way around if you need to expand the text. So things that I personally find very useful is this, that, I mean, I'm kind of bad at writing the first draft. It's kind of hard when you have nothing written, but then I can just generate a starting point. And then I take over and then I edit it from there. Or if I need to, as I said, a summary or something like that, I need to expand a bit. Or to write a better introduction. So I think there's a lot of things you can do in this kind of interaction style. Another interesting aspect is this, that computer programs are also text, which means that you can use these large language models to generate computer programs, to get feedback on your computer programs, for example, do debugging. And so you can just basically enter the program that you have, the error message you got and what you wanted to do, and you can get help in actually fixing the problems. And here I think there's even more interesting things going on, namely that now these large language models are starting to produce tailor-made computer programs in order to answer your queries. So, for example, one of the things that these models used to be very bad at is math, because they don't know how to count or, well, do math. So if you asked it to multiply two, say, 6-digit numbers, it would just make something up because it has no clue about it. But what it does now is that it realizes that you're asking for a math problem. It then generates, in this case, a Python program that calculates the answer, and then it runs the program and then presents the answer to you. So then you have these large language models producing computer programs to compute the answer to the question that you were giving it and then integrating it. So I really think we will see a lot of these kind of very interesting extensions, if you want to say so. You can also use this to generate, for example, interactive visualizations, because then you can just generate JavaScript code or HTML and whatever, and then you can generate interactive visualizations for the output. So it's very interesting, very powerful. The second big area is this information retrieval, and I guess that's why, in some sense, Google is a bit maybe worried, maybe not, I don't know. Will this replace search? Even Sam Altman said that I stopped using Google search, I guess maybe to be provocative, but that instead of having a search query, you get your links and then you look up the answer. Now you just ask your question and you get the answer directly without having to go through the search results. Of course, this can be very powerful. We saw the examples with this deep research, basically collecting information from many different sources, summarizing, analyzing it, and so on. So I think what we'll probably see is that we will use these large language models as interfaces, as ways of interacting with large amounts of complex text. Instead of reading the text, we will have a dialogue around the text to answer our questions or to find and extract the information we're interested in. So I think we can, it's safe to say that the number of applications, the ways we can use these large language models, I think is extremely varied, and I think we will see even more interesting use cases going forward. I think it's also interesting to maybe broaden the perspective. There's a lot of talk about this general artificial intelligence and even super intelligence. So I thought I would at least describe what these things are and a little bit where we are. So I would say that the type of AI we have had so far has been what we call artificial narrow intelligence, sometimes called weak AI. And this is basically where you have AI systems which are as good as people or humans, but on one or a small number of tasks. And I think most people realize that this shouldn't be a big issue. The interesting question is, can we also make artificial general intelligence, meaning that can we build systems that are as good as humans are on everything? So adding this kind of generality, being able to solve many different tasks, doing many different activities, so that we would basically reach some kind of human-level intelligence. Here, of course, I think that the tricky part will be to define or agree upon when we have reached this. And there are, of course, those that argue that today's large language models basically have already achieved this because they are so generic. Personally, I do not equate intelligence with this kind of next token prediction, which is basically what these language models are today, that you take a sequence of text and then you predict what is the most likely next word or continuation of this text. Of course, it can be used for a lot of things, but I think this kind of general intelligence should be a bit broader. At the same time, I don't really see any technical reasons why we shouldn't be able to achieve this. And I also think that even if we do achieve this, I don't think maybe it will be that kind of I don't think it's a threat to humanity or anything like that, because basically it would be like we just have more human-like intelligences. And over time we have seen there's a lot of growth in the number of people on the planet, so we're kind of used to dealing with this growing number of intelligences. The interesting case is, of course, if we go beyond this into what's called artificial superintelligence, where you then have AI systems that vastly outperforms humans on everything. And I think this is the case where things might be a bit more tricky, but here I don't think we are anywhere near it, and it's not even clear to me that it's actually technically possible. But I guess we will find out. I think before going forward, I think it's interesting and important to realize that I think these kind of AI systems will have a major impact on society, including, of course, impact on work. So one of the studies I usually refer to is this that was done on more than 800 consultants at Boston Consulting Group in the US, where they then studied the effect of these consultants when they were using AI tools compared to when they were not using these AI tools. And they came to the conclusion that the consultants that were using the AI tools could solve 12% more tasks in the same time. Each task took on average 25% shorter time, and they could also increase the average quality of the tasks with 40%. So you basically got more, faster, and better by using these kind of AI tools. And I think no organization, no company would not want that kind of improvement. So I think the expectation here is that it will have a major impact on work. There was an important and positive, another positive outcome of this study, and that was that the people that had the most benefit of these AI tools were actually the junior consultants, because they could carry out tasks that previously had required more expertise, more experience, and so on. So you basically lifted the lowest level rather than kind of cutting it off. So you could imagine that if you don't perform on a higher level than what these tools do, then you don't add much, but that was not the case. It was really complementing and helping people to do better work by using these tools. So since we know that it will have a major impact, it's also important that we actually make our AI systems trustworthy. And as I mentioned in introduction, I have been part of this high-level expert group where we developed these ethical guidelines for trustworthy AI. So I actually think Europe has taken a very good position when it comes to AI, namely that, yes, we do want AI, but we don't want any AI, but rather we want AI that we say is human-centered and trustworthy. And what we mean with human-centered is that it's not the tools themselves. AI in itself has no value, but it's the value it produces for us as individuals and for society. That is what we should be aiming for. And then we have this trustworthy part, and that was basically our job to define what that means. And then we said that in order for a system to be trustworthy, it needs to follow the rules and regulations. It needs to satisfy a number of ethical principles. We define 4 of them. And then finally, it also has to have a robust and safe implementation. So it's not enough to have just good intentions. We actually have to build good systems. And the ethical principles that we set up was that these AI systems should respect human autonomy, meaning that they should complement and empower people rather than replace them. So we should be in charge and it should help us. The second is that it should prevent harm. Of course, it should not create either physical or mental harm. So I think this is pretty clear. Third, it should also be fair in the sense that it should have an equal distribution of both the benefits and the costs among different groups so that everyone benefits from this. And finally, we talked about explicability, meaning that this system should be understandable in a broader sense, meaning that we should know that we're interacting with an AI system compared to interacting with humans. We should be aware of what these systems are capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing, so we know how to interpret the results and to know whether we can trust the output and so on. So these were the principles that we set forth. And then after this, the EU Commission has been working on what then turned into the AI Act. So basically turning these ethical principles into regulation. And here the EU is taking what is called a risk-based approach. So if you want to put an AI system on the market, you need to analyze the risks associated with this particular application. And then depending on the level of risk associated with, you get different types of regulations that you need to comply with. And what's interesting is also that there is actually a category of unacceptable risks. So there are those AI applications that are considered so riskful that we shouldn't do it at all, which include social scoring, subliminal manipulation, and a few others. But I think the interesting category here is the high-risk category, which is then categories of systems which could have a major impact on individuals, and therefore there's a lot of regulation before you're allowed to put them on the market. But there is also an expectation that actually a majority of the AI systems should have minimal or low risk, and therefore not require any additional regulation on top of what actually exists. And this regulation was then decided in, or came into effect in August last year. And then there's a 3-year period when more and more of this regulation come in effect. So now in February, this unacceptable risk category is now in effect. So these kind of systems are now illegal. And of course, now that I've mentioned this, now it becomes interesting. If we look at these generative AI systems, can we consider them to be trustworthy? And I think it's interesting to look at, for example, these images. So, I mean, this was an image I also generated, I think about a year ago, on a self-driving car. I needed that for a presentation. I used it for a while, and I didn't think more about it. But then at some point, I actually started to look at the right-hand side of this image. And then I started to think about, which side of the road is this car actually driving on? Is this a country where they have left-hand driving? Or is it even driving against the traffic? So it's kind of unclear because there are so many lanes over there, and then they disappear, and so on. But I think the point here is that usually, if you just look at the foreground, everything looks kind of fine. It's a bit unclear whether it's just one door or two doors, but yeah. And it's kind of exhaustion from a electric car. Yes?
Maybe the AI is suggesting we no longer need left side or right side.
Well, actually, I mean, you can prove using game theory that there are two Nash equilibrium when it comes to driving. Either the important part is everyone drive on in the same direction, but then there are two Nash equilibrium, either left-hand side or right-hand side. But yeah, I think it's probably not a good idea to mix too much. But I mean, there are some interesting videos of having a more what should we say, dynamic driving behavior. Or we can take this video that I showed before, and now I want you to focus on the legs of this woman. First of all, they look kind of wobbly, and it's kind of a very moving around a bit interesting there. But there you see that the feet changed place, but the shoe is still on the right side, so that's kind of fun. She will also take a bit of a jump, yes. So, and then the legs changed back. So maybe now you have the right foot on the right side, I don't know. So as you can see, it's kind of difficult to get all these kind of details right. If you remember, she had a purse in her hand before they zoomed in. And when they zoom out, you will see that her purse is now gone. So you see, now the purse is gone there. So maybe she has very large pockets, so the purse fits there. Otherwise, it kind of disappeared. And so how can you determine whether something is real or not? So this was a picture that was spread, I think like 2 years ago or something like that, showing the Pope in some fancy jacket there. And I think this is a good example of what you could look for if you want to find if things are real or not. So one thing is to see around the eyes here, to get the eyes and glasses and shadows and everything to match. Usually that's quite hard, so you can see that things don't add up. A second thing is to look at hands, and here it looks like it's sucking up the cups with his finger. It's very unclear how you could hold a cup like that. There is also this ring-like thing that's just sticking out there. Yes. So I mean, of course, if you really want to fool people, you would edit these things afterwards. But if you get this kind of just generated images, it's quite easy to see. And you've probably seen there are these images with people with 6 fingers or 6 toes and all kinds of stuff that you can also find. But anyway, I think it's more a matter of time before this is solved. But at least today, it's still possible to get this. So, and I would say it's the same thing with these large language models, that they also have this kind of issues that they will produce things that are not correct. And why do they do it? So, I mean, maybe I can explain a little bit how these language models work. So actually, this ChatGPT, I would say, has 3 parts. I mean, the first part here is the GPT, the Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Actually, this has been around since 2019. The first GPT model was released in 2019. And what this does is basically it learns a statistical model of how language works. So basically, it takes a large amount of text data and then learns to generate or predict what is the next word going to be, and doing this next word prediction. And then this is a generic model of how the language works, and it can be very useful. But as I said, I mean, even the GPT 3.5 was released in the spring of 2022, and no one cared that much. But the real impact came when they released ChatGPT in November 2022. And what was then the difference? Well, the difference was that they had done, they have done what's called fine-tuning. So basically, instead of just having a general model of how language works, they actually adapted the models to how people want to interact with it, using, for example, reinforcement learning from human feedback. So where we as humans could say, we like this, we don't like this, so it actually produces text more in line how we want to use it for different tasks. And then this then became much more useful. After that, there's also been added what's called retriever augmented generation. So basically what this does is the prompt that you write is then extended with relevant background information and context. So, and then this extended prompt is then fed into the language model, and then you get a much better answer, and you can deal with things that are changing over time and so on. But this does not change the model, it only changes the input to the model, and still it really improves the quality. And then, of course, what's happening now is that instead of just generating the most probable next token, it started to generate what's called chain of thought. So basically it has an inner monologue around the answer and trying out different types of answers, and then summarizing and producing a better answer through this. So now we're starting to see more sophisticated kind of usages of these large language models beyond just the next token prediction. So then, of course, the question becomes, can you trust ChatGPT? And I would say, no, you cannot trust ChatGPT. However, if you are aware of this, I still think it can be extremely useful, but you have to be aware that it may do things that are incorrect. So you probably need to check, does this actually make sense? But if you do that, I think it can be very, very useful. And of course, we are also working on actually building more trustworthy and factual large language models. So I'm leading a relatively large EU project called TrustLLM, where we are working on exactly this. So basically, we're doing all the steps from data collection to pre-training to fine-tuning to retriever augmented generation and evaluation in order to improve the trustworthiness of this. And actually, I think, so this project started about a year ago, and what my lesson learned so far is that it all boils down to data. I think that is the core part of this, that if you want to have trustworthy models, you need to have trustworthy data, because that is the kind of raw material that you apply these training methods to. And here you run into the issue that amounts of data available varies quite a lot. So this just shows, how much data we have available in English. We have almost very much English data. We have a lot of programming code. We have quite some German, some Dutch. It even shows up. Swedish is not that bad, but we have other languages that are much smaller. And then you run into this issue that the amount of language data available in different languages determines how good you can make the models. So to take one extreme case that we're working with is Faroese. So these are the small islands in the vicinity of Iceland, which I think have like 30,000 inhabitants. It's an extremely small language. How do you deal with that? So that's a very interesting question. We also have all the issues regarding GDPR and so on, which is making life very hard in making compliant language models in Europe. But I will not go into all those details, but yes, that's a big issue. So what can you do? So actually one of the things that we have been working on is called synthetic data. The work that we were interested in doing was actually when you have sensitive data, so for example medical data, what you could do then is to train these generative models on this sensitive data, and then you generate new data sets from this sensitive data in such a way that you cannot trace back the individuals, but you still have kind of the statistical content, so the kind of information is still there, but you cannot trace it back to individuals, and then you can use this sensitive data. And in this process, we have also looked in how can we make the data more fair. So, for example, we can remove the statistical dependence on sensitive attributes. We can do redistribution between groups, so we get a more representative data set, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of interesting benefits of this kind of synthetic data. And of course, now we're interested in, can we using this for these language models to generate synthetic language data to deal with these low resource languages? So that's one thing we're working on. But I think one interesting thing, which I actually think is a strong point for Europe, is that so far what we have seen is mainly this kind of data-driven machine learning methods. But I actually think there's a lot of value in this more traditional, more knowledge-based AI methods where you have stronger guarantees about the results. And now we're starting to see the combination of these neural networks and these more symbolic approaches into what's called neurosymbolic AI, where you try to get the benefits of both the data-driven machine learning methods and this more formal semantic and so on AI systems, the symbolic approaches. So I think this is could be a really important area for Europe going forward. So what are the trends I see? So, of course, we have this question, will the language models just keep growing? You mentioned the energy consumption. So my expectation here is that, of course, we probably see that the kind of the most competent general models will be these larger models, but I also expect that we will see smaller, more domain-specific models, because, of course, if you're going to run this model for thousands or million times a day, you want the smallest and most efficient model for your use case. So I expect to see a proliferation of more specific models, which would then be smaller and more effective. I also expect the hardware to get more energy efficient. We also are, all the examples I've given have been this kind of unimodal models, so basically generating one type of modality. But what we're seeing now is, of course, more multimodal models, where, for example, you could combine text and images and sounds and so on. So, for example, you can have an image and then you can start ask questions about the image and so on. And so these multimodal models, I think, is of course interesting. Reasoning models like DeepSeek. We are also generalizing from this more, language to more what's called world models. So models that actually kind of have a representation of the physical world. So if you want to use this to control robots or cars or other things, they actually need to be physically grounded. So I think that's interesting. Agentic AI is another area where there's a lot of interest, where these language models, for example, are starting to become more active, collecting information, doing things on our behalf, so having a bit of more agency. And of course, we want all of this to be trustworthy. So these are some of the trends. So now I wanted to take a little bit perspective on how does this influence society. So I mean, I already mentioned this with AI and work, that I think this will have a major impact. But it's also interesting to look at how does this influence the kind of work that we do. And I think this study, I mean, it's kind of old, but I think the point here is more that this was in customer service. And what they showed was that if the newly employed people start to use ChatGPT, they very quickly became very productive. But the interesting case is actually the gray curve here, because these are the employees that started out, I mean, doing things without the AI tool, and then somewhere here started to use the AI tool, and then they became more productive than those that didn't, but it didn't become as productive as those that was using this from day one. And my hypothesis here is that if you learn to do something manually, and then you get the tool to help you, you will find some ways of doing it slightly better than before, but you will not make a huge difference because you have learned to do it in a different way. Compare this to if you're learning it from, well, you don't know how to do it and you have the tool, then you will find the best way of doing your work with the tool, so you're adapting your ways of working to the tool and get the most out of it. And I think, again, this will show that probably it's the newly employed people that will be the best at using this, and they will be the most kind of productive people. Because we who have been here for a long time will have a harder time adapting. So I think we will see a lot of these interesting shifts where those that have a long experience maybe will be outperformed by much more junior people, but using these kind of tools, which of course we will see a lot of angry people because now they feel that they are being run over by the young kids. I think it's just positive. Looking forward to the young kids to take over. But it's also interesting to see that this kind of AI augmentation so far is basically on the individual level. So the individual software developer, individual consultant, or whatever you're individual doing. So it helps you do your work better. But the interesting question is, how do we move this to actually help an organization? How do you introduce this on an organizational level? So, for example, I talked to Volvo Cars, I think it was, in Sweden, and they were now rolling this out to all their software developers. So now they were all using this GitHub Copilot throughout the software developing group, and then really increasing the quality of software development. And of course, we can also think about what does this mean on a societal level? What would this mean? So I think there is a lot of room for improvement and innovation going forward. Because what I think the focus is on so far has been very much on efficiency. How can we do the same things we are doing today, but more efficient? Well, that's nice, but I don't think it's that interesting. What's interesting is, of course, can we start to automate things that previously only people could do? Or even more interesting, can we do real innovations? So actually doing things that neither humans nor machines could do before. So we're really enabling completely new things. And to me, one of the examples of this is, of course, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry that was handed out last year, which then included Demis Hassabis and John Jumper from Google DeepMind for their development of AlphaFold, which is then an AI system for predicting the 3D structure of proteins. So you take the sequence of proteins and then you generate a 3D structure of this. So this was basically a problem that used to require basically one PhD student spending 3-4 years to generate this 3D structure. And now you can do it in 5 minutes using these kind of tools. And of course, that really enables completely new research and dramatically accelerates the research that can be done in medicine and chemistry and other areas. So this is the type of improvement we want to see. So we have the things that that humans currently do, and then we automate partially or fully some subset of that. And now, of course, it's very easy to believe that now there are fewer things for us humans to do. But what we then misses is that we actually have enabled a lot of new things that previously either weren't economically feasible or not even possible to do at all. In every technological change so far, there has always been more jobs after than before, even though, of course, there are a lot of jobs that are being replaced. So it will not be the same jobs. It will not be the same competences that will be required. But so personally, I'm not particularly worried about the total number of jobs. But of course, it will be a major transition in adapting to the new skills and the new competences that's needed. But that is something we know how to do. I mean, we as societies do that all the time. I just included this to have a bit of to show the Swedish ecosystem, to just give a sense of that. So actually, I think we're starting to get a quite good research innovation ecosystem in Sweden when it comes to AI. So we have this very large basic research program called WASP, the Wallenberg AI Autonomous Systems and Software Program, which is Sweden's largest research program ever. So it has a budget of about 6 billion Swedish kroners, about 600 million euros over 15 years. And here we have the goal of, one of the goals is to educate at least 600 PhDs in the areas of AI, autonomous systems and software. So far, we have examined, I think, about 160 PhDs. So we still have 450 to go. I think probably we will end up in 700 or 800 PhDs because we have so many students in the program. So actually, that has been my role. So I've been responsible for the graduate schools. I built up the graduate school for that. We also have a sister program called WASP-HS, which for humanities and society, so studying more the effects of automation and AI on society. I'm also directing a program called WASP-Ed, which is working on educational development. And I put it on the side because the purpose here is how do we take the research all the way to innovation, so using education as a way of taking research into innovation and supporting that. We also been working with competence development. So actually this is the one area that Swedish government has put in extra money for this year to develop new short courses for AI, for different people. And then when we have more innovation, we have AI Sweden, which is then working on accelerating the use and uptake of AI, both in private and public sector. And we have the Innovation Agency who's funding a lot of this. We have a big program in advanced digitalization. We also have the Research Institutes of Sweden, RISE, doing a lot of applied work. So we're trying to get all these different components of the ecosystem to work together and promote development. And one of the things we are doing is this course, Elements of AI. So this is a course that was developed by University of Helsinki in Finland with the goal of educating 1% of the Finnish population, which they did after like a year. And then they had to set a new goal and then said, let's educate 1% of the world's population. And let's start with Sweden. So we were the second country which was then using this course. So we've been running this for about 5 years. So the global course has more than 1.5 million registrations and more than 185,000 have finished this open online course. In Sweden, we have about 80,000 people, that have started the course. And what's interesting is that we could also get university credits. So we actually have more than 10,000 people that have received university credits for this course. So actually this is 0.1% of the population have received university credits from this course. And I'm responsible for this course. And of course, we have automated mostly everything, so we don't need to do that much. So this is a basic course in more what AI is. And so it's not a technical course. There is a bit of simple math just to show like naive base classification and a little bit of these things. So it's more about explaining what AI is, but also get a bit of glimpse into some of the AI techniques. So neural networks, minimax search, naive Bayes classification, and so on. There are continuation courses. So there's a course, a continuation called Building AI. And there you actually do some Python programming as well. So there are more courses. And these courses are available in most languages. It might also be available in Romanian, actually, because Finland, when they were president of the EU, they gave us their gift to EU that they translated this course in, I think they said, all the European EU languages, which should include you. So when it comes to translation, there is DeepL, which is a European translation service, which should be very good. If they used that, I don't know. When we did the Swedish translation, it was a person. And so we had a professional translator that was working with me to do the Swedish translation. So there was definitely not automated.
In this respect, as long as the human subject doesn't have the needed minimum information to be equipped with minimum critical thinking, well, how to deal with?
So, I mean, I think that's a very valid and important point. So, I mean, my argumentation there would be that that's exactly what we need to educate people for, to be critically aware and of what that you actually have to verify and check the results. You shouldn't trust them right off. But as you say, that requires that you know something about it. So, I mean, I think there are a number of things you can do. For example, comparing if there are other independent sources of the same thing and so on. But yes, I would say, but I think that is what the focus should be. How do we educate the population to deal with that kind of situation and not just accept it as it is? I think that's the best answer I can give. So I see there is a lot of hands now. So I'm very happy to take questions, but I think you also want to do your presentation. So what I think I will do, I will just finish. I have 3 more slides, and then I will finish, and then we will continue. So what I think is also interesting is this, that it's hard to make the right decision. So an example that I use is this from Kodak, which was one of the leading photography companies. But what was interesting was that they basically invented the digital camera. So they even launched professional digital camera systems. And they were on their peak in the mid-90s here. But what they did was that they looked, what is our core business, and came to the conclusion that our core business is papers and chemicals. That's what we need for the old previous generation of the camera technology. So let's sell all the patents. So they sold off all the digital photography patents and focused on papers and chemicals. And then, of course, digital photography went, and then iPhone came, and then Kodak went bankrupt. But what's interesting here is probably the people on the board who were the leading experts in the world on photography and probably papers and chemicals, they probably made an absolutely correct decision, but from the wrong technological point of view. So they made a right decision on the previous generation of technology. But that was the right decision from one technological point of view was completely wrong from the next generation of technology. And I think this is the challenge many companies face today, that they need to make the decisions not on the current technology, but they need to make the decision on the next technology that's coming, and therefore need to adapt to this. And this, of course, leads to the European situation, which I think is a bit challenging, that we have not been able to really leverage digitalization. So, I mean, there was this report by Mario Draghi last summer, which basically say Europe has failed when it comes to digitalization. We have not leveraged its potential. Therefore, we are really in trouble. And that he said that we need to invest on the orders of 700 to 800 billion euros every year in order to be able to catch up and to regain what we lost through this. So, I mean, I think we in Europe really needs to step up the game and to go into the future and make the decision on next generation technology, not on the previous generation of technology. I mentioned this also, that we have this, that in Sweden we have now developed this roadmap for AI. So hopefully the government will also actually execute on the plan that we proposed. We'll see about that. So to conclude, I think AI, will have a major impact on societies. So I think it's really this general purpose technology which changes other technologies, and therefore it will have this broad impact. I think what's different is scale and speed. So what we are seeing is that those companies, those organizations that can deal with the scale and the speed are those that benefit from this. And I think scale and speed is not something that benefits us in Europe. We are the other way around. We try to be fragmented and slow. I think we need to change that. I think this will have a major impact on media, education, security, basically all different areas. So, we mentioned this with, election interference, the changes on education. So I think education will be majorly impacted by this kind of technology. And in the end, I'm not worried about this more existential threat. I don't think AI will wipe out humanity or turn us all into paperclips or anything like that. But I do think that what will probably more likely happen is that those people or those organizations that effectively use AI will outcompete those that don't. And I think this can also go very rapidly. So what we're seeing now is that companies are basically redesigning the whole work processes, coming up with completely new ways of doing things. And there are even this, who will create the first single-person unicorn? So basically having a single person together with AI and still having a $1 billion company. When will we see that? I think that's interesting. So I think this is where we need to focus. How do we become good at using these tools to solve the problems we are facing? Because I don't think it's not a question of either humans or AI. It's really a question about AI and humans together. Thank you.
Nice to see everyone here. So let's get to know each other. I'm working for Google Cloud in Central Eastern Europe as what we call customer engineer. It means I'm an engineer working with AI and data, and I'm actually helping both public and private companies invest and actually use AI. So how many of you are actually using AI right now? Okay. And large language models, how many of you have played ChatGPT, Gemini? Perfect, thank you. Now, you should have all raised your hands because you're using AI, whether you know it or not. And just to give you an example, for instance, if you're taking photos with your camera, there's a lot of AI happening there. And for instance, also Google does their own phones, right? The pixels. And I don't know if you're reading what's happening, what we're doing, and it's a lot of interesting stories behind. One of them is related to skin tone. So there's a lot of adjusting relating to light. You can move the light around the face if you don't like the lighting, etc. But what's the real challenge is actually respect to the tone of a person, the skin tone of a person who's actually taking the photo. So if you don't make it too light, too dark, going to yellow, red, and so on. So that's usually a huge, huge issue, just because you need a lot of relevant photos from all the types of tones. So that makes it, let's say, one of the AI problems, having enough data that Fredrik actually discussed about. And I'll give you another example, and I'll jump to, let's say, more data, because I'm really interested into data. You know about Agentul Pădurii, forest agent in Romania? Okay, so this was a really interesting case that we've worked on with a partner that actually did implementation there. It's actually a handful of people that need to monitor all the logs, all the wood transportation around Romania. And imagine it's, I know, a room with actually a handful of people, that's it, that they have around 50,000 transports that they need to monitor. It means from point A to point B, to deposit from the forest, etc. And usually there are very simple things that they need to submit once you actually want to start on this process. A photo of a truck, car, declaration, points, and where you want to move it. You can imagine that people who want to be creative there in moving logs 2 times, 3 times, or maybe trying to declare less than they're moving, it's very hard to find those people. So in the past, they were actually trying to go by, I don't know, venue in some places of, I don't know, say Romania, North, whatever area. There were more cases where there could have been fraud. So they were actually manually monitoring those places. However, it's impossible if you think about, I don't know, 5, 10 people to monitor 30, 50,000 transports. So what they're using right now is actually AI that identifies from each truck if it's a fake image. It means an image of an image. You can imagine how creative these people are. Also, if they're blurry images, images of different images, there are copies from the past, as well as the amount of logs there. They're declaring that there's twice as much that they're moving or less. And it actually can count right now and based on values evaluate if it's realistic or not, as well as give them a potential fraud calculation or idea. So that right now we're only focusing on the high-risk ones, as well as the ones that have a real potential of being a fraud. So this is something that was done in a few months, and this shows how powerful large language models with multimodality are today. So I'll show you some numbers. What is this? Is actually a study that we run to understand what's happening with the use of large language models. So it's actually 675 companies, mainly distributed. You see there the statistics, so I think it's very useful to see that it's a real study. It's not some marketing material. And we try to understand where are large language models actually being used. So most of them are in the area of chatbots, customer service. Why? Because these are, first of all, quite easy to implement right now and have a huge benefit because they reduce the burden of answering all the questions, getting back and forth, as well as, let's say, finding information that's mostly hidden somewhere in documents or website. Second is data analysis. It means that there are a lot of people that have a lot of dashboards, piles of data, and they cannot make sense of it. So this is catching up a lot. And the more we go down, the more complex are, such as security. Documentation means like creating documents based on code that's being generated and so on. And what I find really interesting, and I think this is the place that's going to grow right now due to the power of models, is content creation, specifically for marketing. And then everything that's marketing in terms of communication, writing to different channels, adapting the message, rewriting emails, right? And right now, even in Gmail, you have such features if you want to rewrite some of the functions there. How fast is, let's say, an indicator that we have here, how fast is AI moving in companies? And we have these ones, game changers, and I've worked with some of these, not too many, I agree, that take them, they have the idea, and in 1 month, they actually have it to production. And if you think about it, the process of writing code, so on in the past, were 3 months, 6 months, so it's a huge difference in terms of speed from idea to testing it out. They have pretty much the, what we call the policy of failing fast. So you have an idea, test it out fast, see if it goes, what's the track, how the audience sees it, and then if it's not working, focus on the next ones. Unfortunately, most companies are here, and I'll answer why, because that's actually the question that we have here. Why it takes a lot of time to actually implement something in AI today. And this is, let's say, something that I've been talking for, I don't know, 20 years now, cleaning data, right? people are thinking, yes, I have AI right now, I can put it on my data and it will make sense. It's, as we say it in, let's say, not such a pleasant language, garbage in, garbage out. So if you have a lot of words that don't make sense there, texts that are not relevant, and you want to make an AI give answers on top, and to be relevant, it will give nice answers, but based on the data that you provide, right? So that's pretty much it. So for all, let's say, practitioners maybe in the room, if you are actually working with data, you still need to clean it. The good news is that AI can also help you clean it up. Again, not perfect, but do that 80-20 part of the work. And I'm playing with a lot of tools in this area as well. Just to get an idea about use cases summary, how many of them have deployed by industry? I'm just going to pick some of them. It's a long study here. Financial services, only 11% have fully deployed something in production, and they're fearing regulations. You see data security and privacy showing up 2 times here, as well as skill gaps and financial constraints. I'm not sure this financial constraints is related to AI right now because it's so cheap that, I mean, we see moving from traditional models, AI, to large language models because they're 10, 100 times cheaper, and I'm not kidding here. And skill gaps, yes, this is, let's say, a skill that people who understand, they can make benefit out of it in all industries. And data security and privacy. I mean, the companies that have started putting something into the cloud have already checked these ones out. Why? Because if you go there and you try to understand how I'm going to move personal GDPR type of data, how I'm going to use it to train my models, all these kind of topics, then you are pretty much have a process in order to approach it further. This is just an example of one customer that I'm working with. It's Vodafone Group, and they have 2 major programs. One is the Neuron, and the second one is AI Booster. They started as global programs within Vodafone Group, and this makes it more challenging because they have a lot of countries to cover. And second, because they need to standardize each and every project. And it's interesting because right now they can adapt through this, through the AI Booster program, a lot easier any kind of pilot. So this kind of fail-fast programs that I was talking about. Good. Now, what am I actually doing on a regular basis? I'm working with Gemini, but not the Gemini that you most probably have played with. And it's actually the enterprise version. So what's actually the difference of it? Before that, a little bit of history. So this is what we do at Cloud. Transformer, BERT, all these kind of models. You heard about AlphaFold, MOM, a precursor of it. Palm was the first model that we launched, BARD, and now Gemini. It's 2.0 reasoning. And as Fredrik was talking about, the largest models usually are the best, but most probably don't need it. So this is what, all the time. So this is our actual approach. Just to give an example, if people are writing code here, developers, okay, good. When you need a model to fill in, for instance, the predictive line for what you're trying to fill in, it needs to answer in under a few milliseconds. 20, 30 milliseconds would be the most. If you have a large language model like Gemini Pro with, 70 billion parameters, the question is, with all the network connectivity, is it fast enough to do it? And most probably not. So this is why we have things such as Flash or models that are running in data centers, or even the models that are running on mobile phones right now, that make it faster to get the results. Yes, they're not as complex and they cannot do all the tasks, but they can cover things that are relevant to that task specific. This is actually how we approach, let's say, Gemini or large language models in the cloud. Why? You need infrastructure, and this is, let's say, tens of data centers. GPUs are pretty much the graphical computational units used for gaming usually, and NVIDIA is known for this. But we also developed, and it's the 6th generation already of TPU based on TensorFlow, processors that are specifically built for AI, making them 30-40% more energy efficient and computation. Why? Because they're built specific for this task, and yeah, they're not good for gaming. That's the downside of it. And on top of it, you need to build what we call a platform where you can choose your own model. It means if you want to use, I don't know, Mistral, even DeepSeek, Gemini models, and so on. I think there are 190 models built all together there. You have the model garden, you pick your model and you work with it in a secure environment. And that's very, very important because towards the end, I'm going to talk about how we approach security, as this is one of the main, let's say, issues related to what's happening right now. Now, Google search. Fredrik mentioned about Google search, but he's no longer using it, which is good. We're seeing this, and also Google search has changed a lot as well. So you can actually ask questions, and it's like a retrieval augmented generation kind of engine, and it tells you these are the links. You can click on them, get all the points. But this specific feature means if I have a set of data, I'm asking or talking about food, right? I'm planning the food right now. And in my set of data, I only have some recipes, and I'm trying to understand what this biryani is, right? So I'm asking, what is this biryani? And maybe I don't have it in my recipes catalog. Either the model will hallucinate, which is something that you don't want, because it will tell me something that has nothing to do, and there are a lot of examples on the internet. Or the other way that we're implementing it is do grounding on Google search. It means it goes to Google search and tries to find the relevant information based on sources that are marked as relevant, right? And this is actually how it helps you out, get additional information if needed. That's very important. Now, images are getting a lot better. I remember the Imagen 1, 2, and right now we have Imagen 3 engine. The first ones were interesting, like the ones with DALL-E, but these ones today, first of all, they no longer have 6 fingers or things like this that were really, let's say, funny, and that they are so realistic, it's hard for a human to make a difference. So what we're doing is digital watermarking. It means if you want to test it out, see, is this generated by an AI? Even if it doesn't have anything printed on the bottom there, it will tell you, yes, this is a digital AI result. It's not real. It was generated, so be careful how you use it, right? And I think this is part of our responsibility of what we're doing with AI in the end. Then moving forward is VO2, and I'll show you something, if you have time, VO2, what was generated by some creative team. A lot of animation, short scenes, and this is where it performs very well. Where there might be some work is on longer content. It means not scenes like this that are very good for commercials, like 2, 3, 5 seconds, but the ones that run for, I don't know, minutes on the row. And those are the ones that need to keep context, the faces to be accurate, the people, and so on. And if we go forward, the question is, okay, these are tools, right? These are useful, or toys maybe, in the hands of people who want to play around. However, how do we approach it when we want to use it in a company, right? Because that's pretty much the use of it. So what we were actually putting together, and it was recently launched, so I'm happy that I'm here able to share it with you, is what we're trying to do is try to put together all the, I would say, sources that are in a company. From Google Analytics, so analytics platform with all the reporting, dashboards, any type of, I don't know, Office documents, data sources. Oracle is very common here in Romania. SAP for HR and other planning systems, IBM, and so on. There are Slack, communication, Zoom, etc. Lots and lots of sources that you want to actually search for them, because that's pretty much what you want to do, as well as do different tasks. And when I say tasks, I'll skip through this one, is pretty much this is the platform. It's called Google Agent Space. It's a plain screen where you ask questions, and it's doing the task that you ask it for. So research plan, do a research based on the documents that you have and generate something, right? And right now, based on the sources, it's generating different attributes and all those icons there are linked to the documents, so you know where the information comes from. And at the end, I think what's the important thing about it is that you can generate a conversation, an audio file, so the multimodality of it, that you want to listen or send it to someone, or other things that I will show you. I'll jump through them because I think this is the interesting thing, is the actual action. So in the end, I will ask it, please write me an email to this person, given this content, and attach the files, and keep it short and funny maybe, right? So this is actually what it does, and then it pops up the Gmail with the text written, and you just need to adjust the text, send it, and that's pretty much it. Then, if you want to send it, for instance, in Slack, I have this results, etc., send it to one channel, or what's more interesting, update data and third-party systems. Right now, you are the one who is responsible for what's happening there, but you have all the information that the task can be automated for you. So this is pretty much where we see this agents or the large language models going into a direction. Now, do you want to see something live? Yes. Okay. So NotebookLM is pretty much a free tool to use for personal use. It's secured in the manner that no information from here is shared. Second is that it will not give you hallucinations based on data that you do not provide. So that's also very important. And it generates a lot of interesting things. First of all, you need to add a source. It runs in this version, which is free up to 100 sources, which can be Google Drive, links, documents that you upload, YouTube videos, almost anything that makes sense today. So I'm going to put the enough website here. It's running through it. It takes a few seconds. And most probably it will give me a summary here on the left side. In the middle, I can ask questions after information is indexed. And I'll click on generate and I'll explain in a second what it does. Right. So I have the source here. This is how it looks like, and it brings me a summary. So this summary is from Romanian National Agency for Fiscal Administration, providing comprehensive, etc. Right? And then I have my question, like I explained it a few moments ago. Which form should I fill in if I have income from dividends? Right, let's keep it like this. This is the typical application of RAG, retrieval augmented, that will go through documents and tell me these are the ones. And of course, it's not only a simple that will tell me one, as you can imagine, but at least from the list of hundreds of them, I have 10 of them and I understand which, why, and so on. Okay, so it will go through all the, let's say, paragraphs and give me the links where this information comes from. Now, how should I use it maybe if I'm a student, right? So I have all the PDFs, all the documents, not even a student, right? I want to learn something about AI. So I'm going to put here all the PDFs, all the sources that I have. And I'm going to click on the audio overview. It takes some time to generate. And this is a file that I can download, take it with me on my phone, and listen to it while, I don't know, jogging in the park, walking, or driving to work. On top of this, it can also generate a lot of things such as briefings, study guides, if it makes sense to generate this kind of documents, and makes it, this makes it a very simple way to structure all the information that can be in different formats, structures, very complex ones, and making it, let's say, portable. It takes some time. I already had it generated. So let's see which one runs faster, the one that I played with yesterday. And this should be a lot faster. So it's the same source, it's the same website, nothing, it's just it. And I'm clicking to generate your...
So it seems like you're pretty interested in Romanian tax forms. Lucky for you, we are too. We're diving deep into this webpage you sent over from the National Agency for Fiscal Administration, AAF as they call it.
Right.
And this webpage, it lists out a whole bunch of their tax forms. But here's the thing, each one, get this, it comes with an estimated time for how long it's going to take you to actually fill the thing out.
Wow.
So have you ever like sat there and wondered?
We're not going to listen to it. I know it's interesting. So imagine that right now it's actually being transformed into a more, I would say, digestible format. And podcasts are really, really interesting right now, and people are using it to learn. So this is why the idea of generating a podcast by two voices here, talking about the content there, it makes it, let's say, really interesting. And I actually was quite skeptical at the beginning. As you can imagine, coming from technical area, you need to test things out. So I was actually really interested in the content, how it's being presented there. And first of all, if it's relevant. And I've seen it goes through a lot of things. Not enough, I didn't test these forms, so apologies. I tested something that was really interesting to me. And the second one was, apart from going through all the content, is it actually pointing out the relevant content that I should get from there? And the answer is yes, which is very interesting. But again, if you think through the model, even in the past, if you asked it to generate a summary, focus on, etc., or with the right prompt, it could generate it like 1 year ago. And right now, what we added is through the multimodality to generate the voice, which makes it really interesting. And by the way, there's a paper for VoiceLM that tells you how to generate a lot of things, synthetic data, as well as voices based on inputs. Oh, this is what I wanted to show you, how I actually try to solve in a very short period of time, let's say, which form I had to submit. Now, I'm going to spend just a few minutes on what we do in terms of trust and transparency in AI. Whenever we work with customers that have something in AI, and this was previous to large language models, we have like a board that needs to approve what's happening there. Why? Because AI can look very nice on the header of the salesperson understanding it, but in the background it can be something not tricky, but against some of the rules that I'll go through it. This is the portfolio, not really relevant, different personas. What I wanted to get is what we do here. These are the concerns: security, privacy, legal and regulatory requirements that are changing, governance, bias, this is a long discussion here, environmental impact, appropriate awareness, transparency, and so on. So for most of these, there's an approach. We have responsible AI part of a platform that allows you to understand if all these points are being met, to what extent, and also get an idea from, for instance, where does this information come from if I'm being given an answer? Is this relevant information? Of course, it's not going to do all the work for you, but it's one step forward in helping you get the right information. And on top of it, this is, I think, very important what to do in the Google Cloud, that you control your data. I mean, if you input any kind of data in the AI model, it's not going to be used to train the model to make it better, because you own that part of the model. And on top of this, it's related to security and protection. And the system is built that you have full power in terms of how you manage security, encryption, and everything along the way. What do I mean by this? First of all, whatever happens in Google Cloud is encrypted, both at rest and in motion. This is very important because no data can be, let's say, breached in this manner. And on top of this, I think there are just very, very, very few people in the organization who have access to the data centers inside. And I actually haven't seen one physically because I don't have access. But I've accessed a lot of services from there, which makes it very, very easy and simple to do it. And related to privacy in AI, there are a lot of things that are here. First of all, experience and certifications. This comes from the 10 products that we have right now with over 1 billion users. I mean, you know, Gmail, Docs with all the Drive, and so on, because these were built and had a lot of challenges due to data, security, access, as well as worldwide distribution. And we're trying to make things as easy as possible for everyone who tries to build something on top of Google Cloud. I want to jump here, yes, just to make things faster. Model tuning, this is very important because, for instance, you have like a large language model, Gemini, right, which is frozen, it's trained from time to time, and you have access to it, and you'd say, yes, but I'm sending data from, for instance, my customers as a bank or as a telco to the model. And the answer is yes, maybe, or not to all extent, right? So you have like enterprise search or conversational AI, for instance, that are the agent builder platforms, and you have model builder where you have the adapter layer. The adapter layer is pretty much where you specify how your model wants to perform. For instance, you want to use it as a concierge, or you want to use it as a tax audit advisor, or anything that goes in this direction. And this is actually the place where you do it. Data is encrypted to the large language model, and everything that you see here is in your environment in Google Cloud. I'll skip through it. Here it is. It's in your environment where you manage everything that's related to VPC, customer managed encryption keys. What this means is that you are the owner of the encryption process. You are encrypting your data with your process, your keys, and so on, and then you manage what to do with the encryption keys. And if you lose the keys, this is pretty much useless because we cannot access it, you cannot access it, but you have, again, all the power to encrypt it to the end. This is pretty much, I think, what we're doing for a long time, and this is the area where we're investing the most, to make sure that whoever builds any kind of AI application model on top of Google Cloud, first of all, understand that it's within a delimited perimeter, it's secured, and it's up to the level of privacy that you set it up to be. And there, of course, security by design, encryption at rest and in motion, and a lot of aspects that are being dealt and not specifically linked to large language models. Compliance, this is pretty much the headache here. GDPR is just a small line. HIPAA, the ones that I've been working and interacting with, and so many are. Why? Because different legislation, different requirements are, first of all, imperative to be used by the cloud, as well as the people, companies that build the solution on top. So this is where we do a lot of work here. Since AI is rapidly evolving, there are a lot of policies, and I have links here if you want to go through them. And as well as Google is putting also a lot of effort in helping out with the AI Act, as well as other, let's say, regulations and policies to make them compliant for everyone building AI right now. We do this kind of consultations. So this was the submission in July 2021. And all the content that we suggested that should be, implemented, and the European Union implemented to a certain extent, of course, what they considered was valuable and made sense for them. So this is pretty much how we approach it as an enterprise, both for responsibility in our products as well as helping out in the companies. And responsible AI, this is pretty much guided by our AI principles. And I'll read it out because this is very important in all what we do. Socially beneficial, avoid creating or enforcing unfair bias, built and tested for safety. And by the way, ChatGPT, I think, was the first one out for a lot of languages. Frankly, the model was there in Google for quite some time. However, when you launch a model, for instance, in Romanian language, you need to make sure that it makes sense what it responds. And if a company will invest in using that model for their image and as well as external communication to customers, that the right wording and responsible ways of pointing it out is done. Of course, there are a lot of silly examples of companies using AI properly by exposing their data, which is then tested out during hallucinations and so on. Accountable to people, this is also an important aspect. Privacy design principles, high standards of science excellence. This is also with DeepMind collaboration right now, part of all the Google Cloud. And areas that will not be pursued, cause overall harm, pursuit to direct injury, surveillance violating international acceptable norms. Of course, this is different legislation in different countries, so this is why it needs to apply separately. Purposely contravenes international law and human rights. So this is how we see AI being used forward and how we actually apply it. And I have one thing to give you an idea of what we are doing, and this is almost out, launched as a product. It's called Project Astra. You can Google it, listen to it if you want to.
Okay, let's do some tests. Tell me when you see something that makes sound.
I see a speaker, which makes sound.
What is that part of the speaker called?
That is the tweeter. It produces high-frequency sounds.
Give me a creative alliteration about these.
Creative crayons color cheerfully. They certainly craft colorful creations.
What does that part of the code do?
This code defines encryption and decryption functions. It seems to use AESCBC encryption to encode and decode data based on a key and an initialization vector, ID.
That's right. What neighborhood do you think I'm in?
This appears to be the King's Cross area of London. It is known for its railway station and transportation connections.
Do you remember where you saw my glasses?
Yes, I do. Your glasses were on the desk near a red apple.
What can I add here to make this system faster?
Adding a cache between the server and database could improve speed.
What does this remind you of?
Schrodinger's cat.
All right, give me a band name for this duo.
Golden Stripes.
Nice. Thanks, Gemini.
So what I've seen actually here is pretty much putting together all the models, technology that it's available. And this is pretty much part of DeepMind's research on, let's say, the next generation kind of agent to cover this through all means and a lot of connecting agents in the background. And yeah, I know, this is pretty much my presentation. We have time for questions.
Thank you. I'm a recruiter working for 30 years in HR in Romania. And my biggest concern with that, it's actually, I know World Economic Forum has said the same thing. It's a net increase in jobs, actually, because some jobs will be decreased, some others will be increased. My question is the following. AI adoption is not happening as fast as the jobs are declining. In terms of ethics of AI adoption, because I know people are, upskilling in AI is not happening fast enough at this moment, and you both said the same thing. So my question is, how do we actually do something about the gap? Because it can be a social problem, short term. And how is this covered by the ethical, let's say, framework that you're putting now on AI? And if it's any initiative in this direction, maybe stopping it. Maybe you mentioned something about cooperating with AI and not necessarily replacing jobs. But I've heard clients saying already replacing customer care centers with robots, and those are hundreds of people there. How do you reskill them as quickly as AI is implemented?
I actually have an example for that, and I'm working with a customer that does exactly what I've explained. The customer has, I think, 70, 80 people in the call center. They need to cover a number of countries. And they said, this is a huge cost for us. And the problem is that, first of all, is not generating any revenue. It's only cost. And customer satisfaction is going down. So Net Promoter Score is nowhere where it should. So ask us, okay, how we should do it, because we need to implement AI. We have spikes in terms of requests. Beginning of a month and half of a month when they have some, let's say, billing services happening. How should they approach it? And what we put together is actually two things. One is the technology, where we say, okay, these are the agents that you can use in order to faster answer those 80, 70, 60% of the questions that are easy to answer. And for the rest, you need most probably upskill your team. How to do it? We pretty much worked with them on an interface. On the left is like the agent, and it actually, the AI understands the question, what the person on the phone or over chat is asking. It provides a suggestion. It can click on the suggestion or maybe change it or speak it up. And based on that, the next step was actually to implement, let's say, transform from a cost center to a profit center, which means that in the middle of the call, you identify where's the best moment to promote when the sentiment goes from down to up, certain ways of calculating it, how to sell a different service. Say, okay, I'm making you happier right now. Would you be interested in covering this or if you're jumping in this area?
The advantages of using AI and upskilling, of course, on the existing workforce. But I'm just saying, when you have 100 agents and you train them by AI, probably you'll need 50 in the next 2 years. No, just playing with the numbers. The question is, if the ethical implementation of AI takes into consideration these risks for the next 50 who are actually laid off, what to do until the new jobs will be generated and will be created, because I think there will be some gap in years, and I don't know how this is treated by AI companies.
I think right now the change is happening, but we're not paying attention in the right direction. I mean, for data scientists 2 years ago, there was a huge gap in terms of request and availability on the market, and that was like a big problem in terms of company looking for proper data scientists. So they were actually hiring new grads with the right mentality and way of learning, because this is a new area. And if you have the right approach to learn and forget what you've learned and you learn new things, because this is how fast it's moving, then pretty much you would be going in this area. In terms of jobs, right now, I mean, AI is creating more than it's disrupting from the market. But these are changes. I mean, even if we look at financial reporting, right? In the past, financial reporting means looking at on paper, hundreds of people pointing the numbers, calculators right now. And I've been involved in a financial planning process for a pharma company, all the continents around, right? So this was less than 100 people worldwide covering all the planning processes, distribution and everything that I think 10 years ago, you would have needed like one army, and this is done in 1 weekend. So again, technology is helping us, but you also need to change the way that we perceive it and learn.
I try to start. First of all, congratulations to the organizers of the Nordic Festival. Congratulations for the presentations. First point, it's nice to be prudent. But prudence is coming to a very high cost. We are moving between prudence and move fast and break things. Now, one of the costs of prudence for Europe is that we are risking to lose our cultural identity and our imprint of our moral values in the future society, in the very next future societies. It's exactly what you mentioned. If you are not training AI in a certain language, it is a problem to develop application in that language. It happens that I'm the president of the Romanian Businessmen Association. We have a school trying to make as many applications as possible. And yes, we are facing this problem, which is severe. Not if we are not starting a mass process of training, we are losing ground and we are losing our cultural identity. So the prudence, I think, risks to be more costly than moving fast and breaking things. Second, some observation. Yes, it's right. Now we are facing the problem of data, of cleaning the data, as you put it. But we face another problem of rethinking the processes in production. If you have the illusion that in a, how to put it, in a wrong process, you are bringing an AI agent and it will work, forget it. So we have to clean the data, but also to rethink the processes for the new reality of AI. And third, an invitation for cooperation with any Swedish partner. We are at your disposal. We developed, by the way, also on a Finnish model. We took the old ECDL and we tried to, based on the ECDL model, to develop the same kind of thinking in teaching and diffusing in the business environment, AI principle and application. We are doing it pro bono. It's our mission to make it happen in Romanian also.
Can I? Okay, so my name is Raluca Baracto-Derashco. I'm from the National Institute of Administration. We deliver training programs to civil servants. We actually have a partnership with Google, and we did free webinars with Google about cybersecurity and an introduction to AI. And according to the AI Act and also about the realities in Romania, I believe that the AI awareness first and then AI literacy are the first and foremost, I don't know, weapons, but it's a harsh term to use. Because for the civil servants in Romania, it's a problem. So we need to give them this. In Romanian, that's another problem. So with the help of Google, and I hope with the help of many other partners, we are very open and we have a lot of international partnership. We want to bring them, we organize them free, of course, because we have budgetary constraints, but we also need to develop courses and programs for digital literacy. That's the next step, because this is the new reality. I know we are ingrained in the reality that we have bills to pay and food to put on the table, but this is a reality that comes fast, and it will come on us very soon. So we need to upskill, reskill, and fast. And for us, this is our part. So we are doing our part with the help of our partners and maybe more, and maybe the gentleman there with the business association. So we are trying.
Thank you very much. My name is Alexandru Georgescu. I represent the National Institute for Research and Development in Informatics, ICI Bucharest. We cover in our research and development also software writing, platform development. We cover all emerging digital technologies, especially blockchain, but also AI. And we are very interested, for instance, in the impact of AI on cybersecurity, on industrial control systems, for critical infrastructures, and so on. My question to you is related to both of you, is related to European innovation in this area. As we know, Europe is considered to be a laggard compared to other places, but it is very good on incremental development and on basic research. What do you think are the factors that are leading to lower startup formation and startup success in Europe and creating this gap compared to the US, and some would say also to China? Because I've heard explanations ranging from the cost of reorganizing failing companies to cultural issues and so on. So it would be very interesting to have your perspectives. Thank you.
Okay, there was one more question.
Just very short. Did Google manage to address the AI integration and own staff to preserve the number or develop the own staff number? Just figures.
Staff, you mean employees?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so let me try to answer at least this question. So when it comes to this with reskilling and upskilling, I definitely think that's super important. I mean, for example, in Sweden, we have initialized, it's basically called reskilling, so basically giving people that used to work basically opportunity to go back to universities and study, basically switch careers. So there we have started to do that, but I think, of course, there needs to be much more. Also, I think this relates very much to this with AI literacy. So, I mean, I think what's important here is that everyone needs to kind of understand the kind of basics. And so we have been doing research on AI literacy and what should be taught in schools and so on. But of course, that's a very long-term process. We have also been looking into what we called AI engagement, what makes people engage or disengage, and to kind of understand how can we increase the engagement and to, I mean, be more, aware of what's going on. So I think there's a lot of things to do on the broad scale, because I think that's the one challenge. And then we had this cultural aspect. I mean, I also fully agree. I think that's why I argue for we need to build our own models, because otherwise we will be using, I mean, other people's. Because the thing with these models is that they don't have values of their own, but rather they reflect the values in the data they have been trained on. And if we want to have models that reflect our European or national values and culture and tradition, then we need to train our own models on the data we have that reflects these values. So that's why I'm very strongly arguing for that we need to do this ourselves. And then there was also a question about kind of innovation and startups and so on. So my take there is that I agree we have good research. I think our challenge is this with scale and speed, that we are not very good at scaling things up, and we have a tendency to be quite slow because we have, I mean, long decision processes. We usually have kind of large constellations. You need to have consortia with many partners, and then it becomes slower because there is so much coordination needed. But when it comes to startups, my understanding is that we're actually quite good at startups, but then again, it's the scale-ups. That's where it becomes difficult, that the investor seems to be much more risk-averse. So I think risk aversion is another one of these key things. So here you basically have to have a finished product before you can get the funding, while in the US, for example, if you just have a good idea, you will get the funding to try out this idea, and hopefully it succeeds. So I think that very much related to this with risk aversion, which makes us not able to scale, and it also makes us kind of slow, and I think that is where we need to do things differently.
About culture, I think this is very interesting. I'm working with also Baltic countries, and Baltic countries have, let's say, one issue. They're, let's say, smaller than Romania altogether. And on top of this, their language is quite complex in terms of similarity to other ones in the European Union and so on. So the question about creating one model there is definitely an opportunity. And definitely there's an opportunity to build services, a startup or company, on top of models that are already available, and not talking only about Google Cloud, a lot of other models, and training them on specific data. So preserving culture, if this is the aim, there are different means to achieve it and different ideas, and this, I think, should be done. And we also, I mean, aiming to work with Central Eastern Europe, and I see there's always a focus on English as a primary language. And fortunately, I mean, I see also good results on let's say, not so well represented languages let's say, in development. But again, this needs also our focus and our support from our side. It means that we want to develop something here, which is relevant for us as a nation to build something, not to consume from elsewhere and so on, in terms of, let's say, products, services, etc. Related to, and I think was, I would say it's an important theme about education. Education is important on the long term, as well as we need to understand that education changed dramatically. So as, let's say, a high school graduate, I no longer need to go to university to be relevant on the computer or AI market. Yes, if I want to do research, there are some different steps. You cannot, let's say, burn the bridges. But you also need to make sure that if you want to go on the commercial area, right now education, I think it's almost free of charge. So platforms such as Coursera, Udemy, and a lot of others, sorry for not knowing them, these are almost free of charge, and you can get even Stanford, I think they've published all their, let's say, masters and all their courses online. So right now it's more on the attitude that we need to cultivate in terms of students making sure that they get curious and eager to learn something new, because this will keep them relevant. In terms of people that have hard times on adopting these new means of learning, definitely this is something that we as a company are doing and investing in both high school children and explaining what technologies, trust on the internet, all these, again, free of charge, as well as areas where there was any kind of request to build it. So when there was, I mean, education about security, how do you see security, how it should be implemented. And we have our own, again, maybe biased way of seeing it, but I think this is something that we are, let's say, helping out companies. There was another question about Google. I was really interested, let's say, the perception on the market, because I have a bias, because I see inside what's happening, people moving from the company, a lot of people coming in, and we see AI, we use it a lot internally, a lot of processes, from financial planning to anything that's related to, let's say, very trivial processes inside. From, I don't know, generating synthetic data, working with a model, generating dashboard reports, etc., specifically to my role. We have also an indicator inside to see when you are hired, and to my surprise, I joined 5 years ago. I think that more than half of the company joined after me. So you can get an idea of the scale. And also reading the news is like working with information out there. It might be relevant, but not complete. And we're doing a lot of, if you look up on the jobs opening right now, there are a lot of them. And there are a lot of them focused on AI, on data, and they range from graduate to very professional people. And I think Google is investing, but any kind of company that scales up through acquisition and so on, also needs to be like Johnson & Johnson, their policy was very interesting. Grow big by staying small. So you need to shake your coat from time to time in order to go forward on the direction that's actually relevant.
First of all, I'm a big believer in the European and EU political project, not necessarily in all the details and all the policies, because we can't all agree, but at least in the principles of it. And even particularly in the whole Nordic political project. I'm an admirer of the whole, even the economic project, the social policy that have been enabled there. And I want to ask that, continuing a bunch of questions that have been here, does the EU and Europe in general need in certain regards to be more, let's say, federated, integrated, in order that these decisions can be made faster, quicker, and be more scalable? Because in the current economic landscape, the biggest competitors are, not to get too political, but China and the US, and both these have a much more unitary decision-making process, of which there can be and have been a lot of books written more critical and positive, but let's just say they have this advantage on, when it comes to deciding on technology, which changes very rapidly, and about like the gentleman here said, like break things, and sometimes the prudence. It's not. I think it's not necessarily sometimes the prudence, but it just takes like, if you need to have like 30 states have 30 decisions, 30 referendums, and one state with like 2 million people, and I respect all the autonomy, can like just make a veto and everything blows apart. I think that this sort of process makes the EU in the medium term, not just long term, non-competitive and on the losing edge, like Mario Draghi said. So if you consider also that Europe itself needs a more streamlined process, at least in certain areas of its decision-making process.
I would like to add some comments for us here, Europeans, member of EU, in terms of education, we don't have any more time for the entire formalism of education, especially long life learning, when we need procedures, certificates, and so on and so forth for public administration, staff, children, adults, and so on. We still don't have time to follow the entire process, AQF, and so on and so forth. We just have to do it without waiting to fulfill the process to deliver an acknowledgement paper of doing stuff. And second, about culture, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Ionica Pârvu, currently working in the Ministry of Culture, and I have some discussion, business proposals for both of you, a little bit later. About culture, initially I was very afraid about the uniformity of English language in AI and so on. Now I'm a little bit concerned that we will become cultural enclaves because those technologies allow us to communicate with other culture, other languages, using our own language without being needed to learn the other language. And I think this is a little bit bigger danger than the other one.
Well, I guess I can at least address the kind of EU question. So I also work in an organization called ADRA, which is the European Public-Private Partnership on AI Data and Robotics. So basically we are kind of gathering the AI data and robotics community, and we are the interface towards the European Commission. So we are also part of writing the Horizon Europe work programs. And I would say this has been one of the things we have been pointing out over and over again, that, I mean, if we follow the same procedures, we will get the same results. Will be that basically the way it works, that we have a kind of a strategic discussion now about what is the work program going to be 26, 27. And so we're basically deciding now what the research should be in like 2-3 years. And then they complain, I mean, the Commission complained that we cannot predict what research we need to do in 3 years from now. And we say that, well, it's a fast-moving field, you will not be able to predict it. So I think there it's a typical example where the procedures we have, when you have this fast-moving field, then it becomes basically impossible to achieve that. So I mean, one thing that I have been proposing is that rather than funding projects, I mean, you have to tell exactly what to do. Maybe we should fund people instead. So I mean, we have the ERC grants, which have been very successful on individual researchers, which are then giving a lot of freedom exactly what research to do. Could we do the same for like research consortia? That you can put together a very highly competent, and you can evaluate the quality of the consortia, but they don't have to in advance tell exactly what they will do, but you have selected good people, so therefore they will do good research, and then they can adapt over time. So I think that's one direction. I think the second is that we have a tendency to make things complex by having many partners, which means that we need to spend a lot of money and time and energy on coordination. While if you take, I mean, companies usually are much smaller, they don't need to do all the coordination. It's one organization, they make decisions, but that's within the organization itself. So maybe it's not really that the EU needs to, I mean, radically change its decision processes. But what I do think we need other instruments to fund research and development in these fast-moving fields, so that that funding can be used for the most relevant research at the moment. And we also need to be able to do things in larger scale. I think that has been another issue, that you don't get enough to really build these kind of large teams that you need to kind of move quickly. So I think we also need to have bigger grants in order to achieve that. But I think that can be done as more special instruments rather than to change the overall kind of structure.
Thank you, Fredrik. Do you have a very last comment, or then we need to wrap up?
I think it's better to wrap up. I have a lot of comments, so I'll never stop.
So maybe you can continue on the Google specific. But
thank you.
I'm torn between the sort of Swedish time discipline and the great interest from the audience, and also very interesting presentations. Thank you so much for coming to this inauguration of the Nordic Festival. We hope to see you on other things, if there are things that interest you. And we also look forward to continue working on the IT digital Sweden, and I'm sure also many of the Nordic countries. So thank you so much for coming, and to the audience for coming as well.
Thank you.